Hi, this is Joel Levy with PC Applications, and welcome to Lesson 4, Excel, the Excel Window and User Interface. In this lesson, we're going to discuss what is Excel and what's it used for. Then we'll look at the Excel window and user interface, including tabs, contextual tabs, ribbons, command groups, and dialog box launchers. We'll have a look at the Quick Access Toolbar, worksheets and workbooks, their size and dimensions, and finally, the name box, formula bar, scroll bars, status bar, view options, and zoom control. So hold on to your hats. Here we go. All right. As you can see, I'm ready to go here. I've already run Excel on my computer. I'm in version 2010. And the only assumption I would make at this point is that you would know how to run Excel on your computer at home or work. Before I discuss the Excel window and the user interface here, what is Excel and what's it used for? Primarily, Excel was designed for entering numerical data and doing math, all right, creating formulas and functions. In addition to that, Excel can be used to work with a database. A database would be a collection of information organized in a table structure. So I see these two primary purposes of using Excel to get something done. So now that we decided to work with Excel, let's look at the Excel window and user interface. At the very top we have what's called the title bar. In the title bar we have the default name of the file we're working with. This is an unsaved file right now, so the name of the file is book and a number, so book 1. If we started another file, the name would be book 2 and then book 3 and so forth and so on. To the right of the default name of the file we're working with, it has the name of the application and, of course, in this case, Microsoft Excel. On the far right of the title bar, we have the window control buttons. The red X would close the Excel window and we'd be done with it. Underneath the Excel window buttons are another set of window buttons, and in this case, these buttons control the file within Excel. If you put your mouse over the lower of the two buttons, it says close window. I might have had it say close file, but that's what would happen. In this case, if we click this X, it would close book 1. On the left of the title bar, a couple of things. We have a quick access toolbar, and this is a toolbar with some buttons that we could click and get things done. We'll talk more about that in detail in the next lesson. In the upper left of the screen and on the title bar is an Excel icon. If we click that, we also have window control buttons. Underneath the title bar is the essence of the user interface. We can see we have various tabs such as File, Home, Insert, and so forth and so on. The tab File in Excel 2010 opens up what's called a backstage view. So when I click File, we're in now, again, the backstage view, and it's access to the basic commands of working with Excel, such as save, save as, open, close, new, and print. And we'll certainly be using this when we go to save a file. To the right of the File tab are other tabs: Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, etc. And you can see that when I click any of these tabs, I have what's called a ribbon, and within a ribbon are various command groups. So for example, on the Home tab I have Clipboard, Font, Alignment. These command groups are made up of various buttons or lists of items to choose to get something done. And within a given command group, in the lower right-hand corner, I may or may not see, not all command groups have these, but there may be a little button with an arrow called a dialog box launcher. And if I were to click that button, it brings up a dialog box. These dialog boxes have been around a long time. People who've worked with Excel historically would be familiar with these dialog boxes. So it's another way of getting something done. In summary, we have tabs, ribbons, command groups, and dialog box launchers. Moving down the screen, the next row across the screen here is very important. It's made up of several parts. As you can see on the left here, when I move my cursor to this area where I see a letter-number combination, my cursor is an I-beam, and it says name box. In essence, this is what's called the address of an active cell, and the active cell by definition is where something's going to happen if I start typing or start clicking on buttons. I can also tell the active cell by a highlight of the column and row that it's in, as well as a black outline around the cell itself. So once again, this is called the active cell, and the name box has an address of the active cell. And you can see again, it's the column and row that that cell is in. To the right of the name box, there's actually a small button here called Insert Function, and to the right of that, again, when I get a cursor shape of an I-beam, I'm in an area called the formula bar. To me, this is one of the most important parts of the screen, as you'll see in subsequent lessons. In essence, right now, when I want to know what's contained in a cell, I'm going to click on the cell and look at the formula bar. And we'll get back to this here in other lessons. Moving down the screen is the essence of where we're going to be working, right? A worksheet. Let me back up here a little bit. I talked about Excel creating a workbook. And so by default, we have the default name of Book 1. This workbook can be made up of multiple worksheets. At the lower left of the screen, you can see that by default, when we start a new file in Excel, we have 3 worksheets, Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. The next tab to the right of Sheet 3 is a button that allows me to add another worksheet. So if I click that, it's going to add a new worksheet, and it'll have a name with a number bigger than whatever's been used in the workbook. You might ask, how many worksheets can I have in a workbook? And honestly, the answer is there is no limit. There's really ultimately no limit as to how big an Excel file can be. All right, back to the worksheet itself. On the right side of the worksheet, we have a vertical scroll bar, and of course, scroll bars allow you to see more than you can currently see in your current view. So I could scroll down and see more of the rows in the worksheet. And at the lower right of the worksheet, I have a horizontal scroll bar, and I can scroll to the right and start seeing the additional columns that are in the worksheets. Let me talk a little bit more about these columns and rows that are contained in an Excel worksheet. First, let me talk about the columns. As you can see, the first column on the left has a name, A, and you can see when I move my cursor to what I'll call the column heading, my cursor shape is a black arrow pointing down. And we have columns that increase to the right here, and so we use letters of the alphabet, and we can see A, B, C, etc. And if I were to scroll to the right, eventually you would see the fact that I would get to column Z. If I remember back to Romper Room, I think that's 26 letters in the alphabet. So column Z would be 26 columns. The column to the right of Z is AA, so we go into 2 letters now, and you might guess that it goes out to column AZ. The next column would be BA, and it would go out to ZZ, and then the column after that would be AAA. I'm doing something kind of fancy here. Don't worry about what I'm doing right now. I'll discuss this in other lessons, but I'm simply showing you the far right of the Excel worksheet. If you ask me, does it go all the way to ZZZ and keep going? No. It stops at XFD. That's the last column to the right. And if you ask me, well, how many columns is that, Joel? The answer is 16,384. So 16,384 columns in an Excel worksheet. Earlier versions, the worksheet was not this big, but in 2007 and 2010, this is what you're working with. So now the rows. Talk about the row headings, and if I were to move my cursor over, say, 1, there's my cursor shape. If I were to scroll down, I'd see the row headings increase by numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc. Again, I'm just doing something fancy here, and if you said, how far does this go? The answer is 1,048,576. So if you were to do some quick math in your head and multiply the columns by rows, you would discover there are over 17 billion, and that's billion with a B, cells in one worksheet of Excel. And as I said, we could have an infinite number of worksheets within a workbook, so this can be quite large. So you got some idea of what you're working with there. To continue the Excel window here, moving down the screen, the bottom row of the Excel window is called the status bar. And in the far left of the status bar, Excel tells you what it's doing. Right now, I can see Excel says it's ready. We're going to see several words down there when we're working with Excel. And I would suggest to you that if you're confused about what may be happening, look down there and see what Excel's doing. If it doesn't say ready, then something else is going on. To the right of the status area is a button about macros. We're not going to get into that in this course. There would be something about macros. Then on the far right of the status bar, several important parts. First of all, there are 3 view options. that we can work with in Excel. Right now we're in the default view called Normal. We're going to see something about a page layout view and page break preview. Further to the right we have what's called a zoom control, and you can see that I can simply slide the slider and very quickly magnify or demagnify the worksheet itself. Otherwise, I have the actual number of the magnification, and if you click on that number, it opens up a zoom window where you could choose some predefined options about how big to zoom in on your screen. At this point, I would like to go back and discuss one other detail about tabs and ribbons, and that would have to do specifically with what's called a contextual tab and ribbon. And along the way, I can also show you some subtle differences between the Excel 2007 interface and the 2010 interface. In order to do that here, I've made a copy of the screen view of Excel 2007 and pasted that into my workbook here so I can show you several of these things. First of all, you'll notice in the picture itself of the 2007 screen, in the upper left of the screen is what was called the Office button. This button was basically replaced by the File tab in 2010. So in 2007, you would click the Office button to get access to the menu that would have the basic commands such as save, save as, open, new, and what have you. So that's just one of the subtle differences between 2007 and 2010. Other than that, as you can see, there were basically the same tabs and associated ribbons in both versions. Again, there are some subtle differences between these two, but nothing that I think you could overcome. The other point I want to make here, though, is about what's called a contextual tab. And you can see that once I've clicked on this picture that I've pasted into the workbook, I have a special tab, actually several tabs here. I have something called Picture Tools and then a Format tab, and there's specifically the ribbon that's associated with formatting this picture. You could see in the workbook, if I click away from that picture and have an active cell in the worksheet, I do not see the contextual tab in my user interface. So there are circumstances where by selecting certain things you will see special tabs. Again, the term is contextual tab, pop up at the top of the screen. Anyway, there's the end of this lesson, and look forward to working with you in the next lesson, which will have to do with working with the Quick Access Toolbar and ribbons.